This is a lecture for ISOL 631, Chapter 6 in the textbook, Security Policies and Implementation Issues. And this chapter is IT Security Policy Frameworks. An information technology security policy framework is the foundation of an organization's information security program. The framework consists of a library of documents. A policy framework is much more than just that collection of documents, though. Organizations use these documents to build process, determine acceptable technologies, and lay the foundation for enforcement. Security policy framework documents and their implementation express management's view of the importance of information security. Security policies framework can be large and complex with significant impacts to the organization. Implementation requires strong management support, good planning, and there are many individual tasks and issues to resolve along the way. This chapter covers the components of an IT security policy framework. It also helps you understand how to create a framework that meets your organization's needs. So the learning objective for this chapter, describe the components and basic requirements for creating a security policy framework. So the goals of this chapter, so when you complete the chapter, be able to describe the role of a policy framework in an information security program, describe the different types of policies used to document a security program, explain the roles of policies, standards, guidelines, and procedures. Explain the organization of a typical standard and policies library. Explain the personnel roles in a typical security department. And explain what the CIA triad is and why it is important. So the key concepts we'll look at in this chapter, key building blocks of security policy framework, the types of documents for security policy framework, information system security or ISS and information assurance considerations, and process to create a security policy framework. So the Policy and Standards Library Framework. An IT policy framework includes the policies, standards, baselines, procedures, guidelines, and taxonomy. Many frameworks resemble a hierarchy or tree. At the top of the tree is a charter or program framework policy, followed by additional policies. Then there are several standards. Under standards are many guidelines and procedure documents. Getting the framework right is key to a successful security program. The figure on the screen offers one view of how you might structure an information security policy and standards library. For the framework to be useful, it must be accessible and understandable. While most frameworks are available online, it's not enough just to provide access. It's equally important to ensure the documents are written at a level that is well understood and can be navigated easily. The documents must be well organized so that users can find what they are looking for quickly. One consideration is an organization's security posture is often expressed in terms of risk appetite and risk tolerance. These two terms are sometimes misused and assumed to mean the same thing, but they are not the same thing. Risk appetite generally refers to how much risk an organization is willing to accept to achieve a goal. This is often expressed by the impact on the organization and the likelihood of something bad happening. Policy framework components. The first one at the top of the triangle is policy. Policies are an important part of an information security program. They are best defined as high-level statements, beliefs, goals, and objectives. Policies help protect an organization's resources and guide employee behavior. Security policies help you address critical computer security issues. With effective policies in place, your organization will have better protection of systems and information. Security policies also provide the what and why of security measures. Procedures and standards go on to describe the how of configuring security devices to implement the policy. The lack of information security policies and enforcement leaves an organization vulnerable to data breaches, business integration interruptions, and legal liabilities. In fact, in many states, not having or not enforcing information security controls in accordance with industry norms could lead to jail time for business owners and executives. Standards. You have many choices when deciding how to protect your computer assets. Standards are formal documents that establish uniform criteria that you can evaluate and measure, methods to accomplish a goal, and repeatable procedures and practices for compliance to policies. Security standards provide guidance towards achieving a specific security policies. Although security policies are written at a high level, there's insufficient detail to explain how people should support them. Security standards are often related to particular technologies or products. They are used as benchmarks for audit purposes and are derived from industry best practices, experience, business drivers, and internal testing. Procedures. A procedure is a written instruction on how to comply with a standard. A procedure documents a specific series of actions or operations that are executed in the same manner repeatedly. If properly followed, procedures obtain the same results under the same circumstances. Procedures support the policy framework and associated standards by codifying the steps that are taken to yield compliant systems. Procedures should be clear and unambiguous, repeatable, up-to-date, tested, and documented. Examples of procedures include incident reporting, incident management, user ID addition or removal, server configuration, server backup, and emergency evacuation. A single standard often requires multiple procedures to support it. Guidelines. IT security managers often describe guidelines or guidance documents to help interpret a policy or a standard. Guidelines may also present current thinking on a specific topic. Guidelines are generally not mandatory. Failing to follow them explicitly does not lead to compliance issues. Rather, guidelines assist people in developing procedures or processes with best practices that other people have found useful. A guideline can also clarify issues or problems that have arisen after the publication of a standard. You can think of guidelines as standards in waiting. They are used where possible, and feedback on guidelines is given to ICT security managers responsible for policy and standards maintenance. Guidelines provide the people who implement standards or baselines more detailed information and guidance to aid in compliance. These documents are optional in our library, but they're also very useful. Eventually, a guideline may become a standard when its adoption is widely accepted and implemented. So, common policy frameworks. So there are industry standard policy frameworks, and they provide references for governing information security in an organization. They allow you to leverage the works of others to help jumpstart your security program efforts. The following areas determine where framework policies are helpful. Areas where there is an advantage to the organization in having the issue addressed in a common manner, such as shared IT resources. Areas that affect the entire organization, such as personnel security. Areas for which organization-wide oversight is necessary, such as compliance. And areas that through organization-wide implementation can result in significant economies of scale, such as unified desktop and computer management. And some of those controls, for example, are control objectives for information and related technologies, usually called COBIT. It's a widely accepted set of documents and is commonly used as the basis for information security program. COBIT is an initiative from ISACA, formerly known as the Information Systems Audit and Control Association, as preferred among IT auditors. Second one, the ISO IEC 27000 series. It's an internationally adapted standard. The series can be found in information security management programs of virtually any organization. And then the National Institute for Standards and Technology, the NIST, special publications. An example is the SP 853, Recommended Security Controls for Federal Information Systems and Organizations. This is geared to U.S. government agencies and their subcontractors. Many of the regulatory bodies use these standards to develop a security guidance and auditing practices. By relying on those who have paved the way for them, they can help to ensure compliance with regulations that affect your organization without reworking all of your compliance processes. So, access control policy branch. The figure on the screen illustrates an example of an extract of a policy and standards library. The figure highlights an access control policy, which is one of my security-related policies. So at the top you have the program framework policy. So you have a program charter. And then it has a identification and authorization standard. So those are the guidelines. Also has password standard and remote access standard. Also have the Unix system password standards that come down from the password standard, and then also the Windows side standards for passwords. And then coming down from the Unix systems password standard, you have the Unix password procedure. And from the Windows system password standard, you have the Windows server procedure and the Windows desktop procedure. So that all that combined together would be part of the policies and standards library. So some of the external and internal factors that affect policies. Policies must align with the business model or objective to be effective. And external factors, regulatory and government initiatives will have impact on the policies, and also internal factors such as culture, support, and the funding that you have. So creating a security policy framework. An organization's collection of security policies, and therefore the entire security framework, shows its commitment to protecting information. As with security policies in general, a couple of considerations for implementing the framework are cost of implementing and maintaining the framework, and impact of the controls required by the framework on employees, customers, and business processes. Creating a policy framework from the ground up takes time and effort. It's important for management to budget for these expenses. In addition, as the number of documents in the framework grows, you may need a content management system to manage the documents. Many organizations already use Microsoft SharePoint Server or a similar product to manage all business-related documents. You can use the same system to manage documents in a policy framework. Employees often resist change, especially changes that affect how they need to perform their jobs. But a comprehensive policy framework can help employees do their jobs more efficiently. The framework includes guidelines that employees can follow and procedures that specify how to perform tasks. Essentially, a policy framework provides a structure within which employees can work more efficiently. So roles related to a policy and standards library. The first one is the Chief Information Security Officer. Their activity is to establish and maintain security and risk management programs for information resources. Then the Information Resources Manager maintains policies and procedures that provide for security and risk management of information resources. Then the Information Resources Security Officer directs policies and procedures designed to protect information resources, identifies vulnerabilities, and develops security awareness program. Then the owner's information resources responsible for carrying out the program that uses the resources. This does not imply personal ownership. These individuals may be regarded as program managers or delegates for the owner. Then the custodians of information resources. They provide technical facilities, data processing, and other support services to owners and users of information resources. Technical managers provide technical support for security of information resources. Internal auditors conduct periodic risk-based reviews to ensure the effectiveness of information resource security policies and procedures. And users have access to information resources in accordance with the owner-defined controls and access rules. So information assurance and information systems security. To develop a comprehensive set of security policies, you must start with the goals of information security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Information assurance tenets also include non-repudiation and authentication. To meet information assurance needs, your framework should include policies for the following: automation of security controls where possible, implementation of appropriate accounting and other integrity controls, controls that handle potential conditions that appear while a system is operating. This should include error handling that won't reduce the normal security levels it's expected to support, and fail secure rather than fail safe is better than protecting information systems. Development of systems that detect and thwart attempts to perform unauthorized activity, and assurance of a level of uptime of all systems. So, information system security considerations. The success of information security program depends on the policy produced and on the attitude of company management towards security information systems. The policy framework helps ensure that all aspects of information security are considered and controls are developed. As a policymaker, it's up to you to set the tone and the emphasis on the importance of information security. So, unauthorized access to and use of the system. Internal controls from yesteryear are inadequate to control today's decentralized information systems. Relying on poorly controlled information systems brings serious consequences. These consequences include an inability of the organization to meet its objectives, an inability to service customers, waste, loss, misuse, or misappropriation of scarce resources, loss of reputation, or embarrassment to the organization. To avoid these consequences, risk management approaches are needed. Risk is an important part of doing business. Risk management is a process of reducing risk to an acceptable level. You can reduce or eliminate risk by modifying operations or by employing control mechanisms. Unauthorized disclosure of the information. Maintaining the confidentiality of information is critical to many organizations in the age of knowledge workers. When you consider the economic activity in the world's more advanced nations, most of the productive output of workers is information rather than the widgets that you might have seen decades ago. Disruption of the system or services. The demands for timely and the volume of information are increasing. One major protection issue is the availability of information resources. In many cases, service disruptions or even a few hours are unacceptable. Think about how much revenue Amazon.com or eBay.com loses for every hour of downtime. Reliance on essential systems requires a plan for restoring systems in the event of disruption. Organizations must first assess the essential consequences of the inability to provide their services, and then create a plan to assure availability. Modification of information. If information is modified by any means other than the intentional actions of an authorized user or business process, it could spell disaster for the business. This underscores the importance of integrity controls, which prevent the inadvertent or malicious modification of information. And finally, the destruction of information resources. So in addition to unauthorized modification of information, security controls should also protect against the outright destruction of information, whether intentional or accidental. The most common control used to protect against this type of attack is the system backup. By storing copies of data on backup tapes or other media, the company has a fallback option in the event that data is destroyed. So that's the end of the chapter. In summary of what we looked at considerations for information assurance and information security. We looked at the process to create a security policy framework, and we looked at the factors that affect policies and the best practices to maintain policies. Thank you.